Hey guys, welcome back for day 15. If it kind of seems like I'm jumping around today, it's because I kind of am. I think there is an order to the way that I do things, and I like things to be in a specific order. And there's a lot of small things that I have to get done before I could proceed with the bigger things on this camper. So you're going to kind of see me hop around and do a bunch of different things today. So while you're watching me struggle trying to get this couch in by myself, I do want to tell you about something that I'm kind of excited about. I just came out with a used RV first time buying guide. And I think it's going to be really helpful for people who don't really know what to look for in terms of like water damage or how to tell the age of the tires, propane tanks, what to look for on your slides. There's actually a whole bunch of things on there. And I've included pictures to kind of make it easy for people who don't know what they're looking for. If you're interested, it wasn't super unreasonable. And because I'm kind of taking a break from my business up until April because I'm homeschooling my kids, this is going to be something to keep my business afloat until then. So just think of it as an investment in me. Okay, back to day 15. So right now I'm basically going to attach this couch to the actual frame that I made. So I'm pulling it out and kind of centering the couch. That way it's relatively, I guess, not sticking out one way or the other. And what I'm doing is I'm getting some deck screws and finding out where the framing of this couch is under here. And I'm pretty much just going to drill a screw in from the framing of that front piece that I built right there and the little slider piece up into the actual couch itself. So this couch has a wood interior, and it made it a little difficult because I was really hoping to attach it in the middle portion, but there was a metal bracket that was right there that was really just irritating me, so I ended up doing it a little farther back, and I think one or two screws on each side of the couch. All right, so now that the couch is nice and secure, I'm going to go ahead and start on trim on the floor. So this is just PVC trim. You can really use any type of trim you want. I just like PVC because it's really flexible and it's easy to cut. First of all, you see I have my special trim cutters right there. They're basically just like a little handheld tool. I'll link those in my Amazon storefront in the must-have tools section, along with a couple other things I'll mention in this video. It just makes life so much easier. That way you don't have to like walk out, or you don't have to like use a saw to get the miters just right, or I don't know. This thing's just really a lifesaver and a time saver. And it's funny because I feel like trim used to be one of those things that I would really struggle with, especially trim on the ceiling, because it's different than trim on the floor on what angle you put it on. But I feel like it's one of those things where the more you do it, the better you get at it. So this is really just about practice, 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 and don't waste a whole piece of trim. Do some test fits, especially on like funky pieces first. Speaking of funky pieces, so this little funky tool right here is called a T-bevel, and I've linked that on my storefront as well. And I pretty much just put it up to that funky angle and then put down the little screw that's there. So this is the exact angle that I know that edge is at. And then I put it on my miter saw and I get the exact edge right there. But obviously you can't cut it on that because that wouldn't really make any sense. Then you'd have two pieces that are the same. So you take that number, I think it was probably like 70 or something, and you half it, and then you move the miter over to half of whatever that is. And then these are just some two little test pieces right there that I just want to make sure before I cut the big pieces that it will fit. And as you can see, I just move the other side over and voila, it fits perfectly. So that's just a little trick for those like weird funky edges. You can get a protractor out and do it that way, but this way just seems a lot easier. All right, so I've got all my trim laid out, and I'm one of those weird pieces or people who doesn't go like piece by piece. You can totally do that. I just don't like to in case I accidentally mess one up. And so I've already got all my pieces laid out and I've made sure they fit. So I'm going to go ahead and tack them in. This is my 18 gauge nailer with just some 1.25 inch nails. I think that's probably about right. Yeah, nothing too crazy. If you have the actual trim nails, you can do that too. They're like a lot thinner, but I always end up putting like caulking or something over the holes anyway, so you can't really see the holes. So next I'm going to tack down this side. As you can see, those angles fit perfectly. And then I also had, let's see, 2 funky angles right there. So I basically did the same thing with that inside angle. And it usually works out pretty good. Sometimes you may be off a degree or two, but I mean, this is why you use test pieces just to make sure before you cut your long pieces. Next, I'm going to go ahead and start filling all these nail holes. I need to go ahead and prime several pieces. And so before I can prime, I need to fill these in. If you remember correctly, this panel was entirely off. So I need to fill in those holes, and then I'm going to start taking all these nails out of this slide piece right here. So this is the piece that's actually behind the trim pieces that they put for slide outs. This is not the actual like decoration for the slide. I wouldn't recommend staining that or using that for anything. I put pine over it, which is what I'm fixing to cut right now. So these are just common pine boards. You can find them anywhere, Home Depot, Lowe's, wherever. And I'm just cutting these down to size. So I think I ended up using 2 6-foot pieces maybe, and then I think I bought a 10-foot piece. And you could have put the 10-foot piece in 2 smaller sections, but I wanted it seamless. I didn't want like a separate seam in the middle, so I just went with the longer piece. And as you can see, this one is really long, so I'm not going to cut this one on my table saw because it's going to be too wobbly. There's going to be too much like hanging off the side right there. So I'm going to take it outside and cut it with my circular saw. So I've made my measurement right there. And as you can see, I'm just using my speed square to make sure that it's a square cut. And I mean, you literally just put the speed square on and put the blade up to your mark and just go at it. So that's just a little trick. Now for my least favorite part is sanding these boards down. You do need to sand them. I've made this mistake before on not sanding them. Wouldn't recommend it because they have this like, I don't know, some type of like wax on them, and the stain won't hold to it if you don't sand it. So sand the side that you're going to see, and then I take just a piece of sandpaper and I sand the edges. I don't want kind of a rough edge on this because those edges can be kind of sharp. So I'm just getting that little wax off of the side so the stain can actually adhere to it, and just softening up that edge a little bit. That way if somebody bumps into it, they don't look like cut or something. So now that I've created a mess in preparation for stain, I'm going to go ahead and blow all of this dust off. I do recommend blowing it off because there is a lot of dust on it and it will like make your stain all sticky. And this is just, it's I think like 1 shade lighter than natural because I wanted something really light to match the flooring, but I wanted to get a little color too. So that's why this is so light. You really can't tell much of a difference, but I really like the light stains, so that's what I went with. Now while that is drying, I'm going to go ahead and sand all of the holes that I just filled. This is kind of a tedious process for me. There's just so many little holes, but it's fine because I know it's going to look great in the long run. And of course, got to clean up my mess because if not, it'll just get super dusty. So go ahead and clean that up. And now for the fun part is attaching these pine boards. So no really crazy way to attach this. I pretty much just line it up and then use my 18 gauge nailer to go ahead and put some nail holes in it. Would not recommend using a 16 gauge because these are pretty heavy pieces of wood, and I've tried using a 16 or an 18 gauge before and it held, but you had to put like 70,000 of them in there, and then you see all of these like nail marks. So I do recommend getting the 16 gauge because then you can get away with only putting like a couple, like 5 or 6 in there, and it just makes it look a lot better in my opinion. All right, so now that those two are stapled on, we're going to go ahead and work on this top piece. And if you remember correctly, I did say this was a pretty big piece. So because it's a pretty big piece, I'm going to use clamps to hold it on. And this is me yelling at my kid because he's coming in here. So use clamps to hold it on, and then I'm pretty much just going to adjust it from there. There is a pretty like big, I guess, side hangover on the left and the right side because it's this slide is kind of strange how the mechanism works. If you can kind of see in the back, there's like a motor back there with it's like chains that bring the slide in and out that work on tension. And so the slide is kind of inlet a little bit on the roof part, which just made like a little box at the top. And you'll see I'll get eventually how to cover up the chains and stuff at the top, all the slide mechanisms. I'll get to that part eventually, probably not today. Okay, so this part is going to be kind of a lot, and it may not make sense what I'm doing, but just bear with me. So I want the front of this couch to be upholstered, and I want it to look like the couch is totally seamless. But obviously I can't just buy a couch like that, so I'm going to have to make it. So what I'm doing right now, this is just a piece of scrap, like 1/4 inch paneling, and I'm screwing it in. And then I am going to crawl underneath right here and mark out where the handles are because I need to cut out the holes for the handles. Could I do this with a router? Yes, I could, but I don't want to attach this panel yet because I need to upholster it before I attach it. So I'm just crawling in here and trying to reach over as best as possible and draw a hole where the handles are, so we'll be able to actually use the handles and they won't just be covered up. So now I'm just using my multi-tool to cut out the marks that I just made where the handles are. Nothing crazy here. If you don't have a multi-tool, I definitely would suggest getting one because they're so versatile and they have metal blades. You'd be surprised how often you need to cut something that's metal, like a screw that just doesn't want to come off. Okay, so let's talk upholstering. I don't think you guys have seen me do this, so just kind of watch while I explain what I'm doing. This is, it's a marine grade vinyl that I get at Joann Fabrics, and the top part is basically just a little fluff. You can buy it in the yard also at Joann Fabrics. The cushion just adds a little bit of extra, I don't know, something, a little pretty to it. And as you see right there, I just drew on Sharpie where the holes were for the handles, and that way these two pieces perfectly match up. Now, time to upholster. Cut out the specific section there. You don't need a whole lot of fabric here, but you do need enough to be able to wrap around. Now, I'm not going to upholster this entire thing, and you'll see why in a minute, because this is really just a face piece, and the side pieces I'm actually going to wrap around the actual frame of the camper. So I pretty much just pulled one side up and then stapled it in. This is an upholstery stapler. They're really short staples. I think they're like 1/4 inch. And then pulled the other side kind of tighter and then stapled it. And now I am just cutting the holes out for the hands and then just stapling the upholstery to the back side of that. All right, so now that that is mostly upholstered, I'm going to come put it in to make sure it fits, and it does. And then I'm kind of just tacking it in with those, this is just 1.25 inch or they're nails actually. They're just really thin nails. And I do it with a high enough PSI that it goes through the fabric and it doesn't pinch the fabric, so you can't really hardly even tell that those are stapled in. And then I take these little extra pieces right here and I wrap them around the side. That way it kind of gives it a more seamless look. So I hope you see where I'm going with this now. There is a method to my madness. And then these little side pieces, I went ahead and painted those real quick before I end up upholstering the little bottom pieces right here. And then while I had the paint out, I was going to go ahead and give the entertainment center another painting because I had filled in all of those holes right there as well. And now we can get to those little side pieces that I was just talking about. So this is just the same type of wood. I measured and I cut 2 separate pieces. This is kind of funky way that I do this, but it looks really good. I don't upholster 2 separate pieces and stick them together. I make this one piece of fabric and I kind of bend it in on each other and it looks really good. So this is just that little fluffy part that gives a little something. Just cut that, and this is the same process that I did with the other one. This really just takes a lot of like thought and planning as to where you want to upholster it and where you want to put your staples in. And obviously I'm like double checking right here to make sure that I'm folding it up the right way. And this is just my brain not working, and there you go. See, that's the way that I want it. I want it to fold in. So I just staple these, and you would think that this wouldn't be as pliable as it was, but it actually is really pliable, and you'll see once I kind of put this together. And I mean, there's really like no crazy way to do this. It's just work the corners and make sure that the corners aren't really like chunky because it won't lay flat if they are. And as you can see, I just kind of test it to make sure it'll still bend up right there. And then I leave some scrap on the top and on the side because I'm going to end up kind of tucking it up over that framing that's right there as well. And I know what I'm saying probably really doesn't make much sense, but it's easier to watch me do it than it is for me to explain. So you see how I kind of bent that piece over the corner right there, and then I have this little scrap up on the top that I'm going to staple. Ideally, I would have done this before I put that little side table in, because I could have tucked it under the side table, but I didn't think that far ahead. So that's really my own fault, but it ended up looking fine because I just put a little trim piece down at the bottom. So I'm trimming that off, and then one more step for today is primer. So I went through the trouble of filling all those holes. So now I'm going to go ahead and prime it. This is the bed. I did take the hinge part off right there in the beginning just so I don't get the hinges all yucky. But this is just Kills primer. You guys have seen me prime a million things. And then I'm going to go ahead and let this sit, and then I can start painting everything else. And if you're curious, this is not even close to being finished. Even though I finished it now, I do probably have about 10 or 12 more episodes until I am finished with this. So hopefully I will continue to work on that. I hope you guys are enjoying this. Let me know if there's something else you want to see, and have a great rest of your day.